and we will get started. Welcome everybody thank you for joining us this evening as we journey through Tanzania. My name is Liz, I'm with Alluring Africa, and this is our special guest, Abigail, who was my travel partner through this long and amazing journey through Tanzania.
Mm-hmm. So we spent 23 days, so almost a full month. We actually visited 41 different properties. We went from central Tanzania to north to southern Tanzania. So we covered a lot, and we're really excited to touch on the highlights with you guys, share some of the wildlife and the experiences that we had.
Exactly. All right. So as we mentioned, I'm Liz, this is Abigail, and a little bit about Alluring Africa for those of you who aren't familiar with us. It is our purpose to create rich and meaningful connections, and we do that through enhancing life, through travel with a purpose. So for us, what's really important is that you're creating a connection with the land, with the animals, with the people, with your friends, your family, and also doing that with a purpose behind the travel. We are really particular about who we work with. You've got 24/7 emergency contacts on the ground. We work very hard to make sure that we are focusing on sustainable initiatives that are conservation focused. We have direct relationships with everybody on the ground, so there really is no middleman. It's you and us, and connecting you with the places that make the most sense for you. And through that, we're able to kind of be thought leaders in our industry through travel and tech and that sort of thing. And our partners really trust us, and they come to us because the owner of our company has roots in Africa going back 30 years, actually founded a organization here called Safari Professionals of America, which is an alliance of US-based tour operators that specialize in Africa. So we're in this for our clients and really for the passion and the love of conservation and sustainable tourism. You'll see Becca just commented in the chat box, we're here, so if you have questions along the way, somebody's there to answer them. We can see them popping up too, so we'll do our best to engage and answer any questions you have along the way. So just a little bit more about Alluring Africa, and then we'll dive into Tanzania. We're here, and we've been here, and we will continue to be, with a focus and a passion on making sure that we are connecting you through the vetting process of the right partners who have been around for a long time and are focused on the right things and are really supporting the local community. And we've got travel insurance. We offer the best. We'll help you if you need to file a claim. Our pricing is guaranteed, and our clients, you know, you can ask any of them. They will tell you what an incredible time that they've had. We have a 99% satisfaction rate, which is pretty incredible. I think part of the best part about clients coming home is that I get to live through their eyes the experiences and the journeys that they've been able to go through, which is pretty amazing. All right, so enough about us. On to Tanzania. So as you can see by this map, we covered a lot of ground.
Days of driving, multiple flights. We spent a lot of time on every mode of transportation to get up and around and see the best sights of the country that we could.
Yeah, so we're going to start out with you in Arusha, which is basically where everybody starts. So you fly into Kilimanjaro, which is the international airport there, and you head to Arusha, which is a small town located just outside of Kili. It's located at the base of Mount Meru, so you can see in that image that there's a volcanic mountain there. And it's really kind of the gateway point to Safari, but also Kilimanjaro, if you're wanting to see that, which is Mount Kilimanjaro is close by. You can kind of see it on the corner of that image. We were picked up by Ayub.
He was our driver for the first half of our trip. So for 12 days we spent with Ayub, and we became the party of three. So he basically became like our big brother, one of the most knowledgeable people I have ever met. He was such an incredible guide. He spoke like 5 languages, had so many stories, knew everything about wildlife, knew everything about the country. And so we just got to spend that time sitting, hanging out, and learning as much as we could from him.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So he saw me, you know, making eyes at the sunflowers because it's my favorite, and he just pulled over on the side of the road and was like, "Here, go hang out with the sunflowers and take a picture if you want." So I feel like it's always important to touch on the guide because it really can make or break your trip.
Right. And he made our trip.
He truly did. Yeah,
absolutely.
Africa, it's the people in Africa just as much as the wildlife and the landscapes that find a way into your heart. Yeah. So our first stop was River Trees. This is just outside the foothills of Mount Meru. You can, on a clear day, maybe catch a glimpse of Kilimanjaro. Really sweet, charming, like
quaint little first stop.
Yep.
It was nice and cozy. We got to spend a quick night, and then we got to rest up before we headed out on our adventure.
Yeah, they had a great dinner and great breakfast. It's a good, you know, when you're coming in from an international trip, you're tired, you're jet lagged, and you just need a good night's sleep. So this is where we were able to rest our weary heads for the night. And then the next morning we woke up and we wanted to spend a little bit more time in Arusha just to kind of really understand what it had to offer, check out some more properties, that kind of thing. And we were able to go to this place called the Cultural Heritage Shop, and it was
amazing.
Such a cool experience.
It was so cool. So they had like little shops where you got to go and you could shop for textiles, you could shop for art, and then they also had the number one Tanzanite supplier for the country of Tanzania. So we got to go in, we got to learn from him, we got to try on some rings and some jewelry.
Yeah, and you learn about all the different types of stone and the color and all of the clarity. And as you can see by the image, I mean, Tanzanite for days.
It was stunning.
But beyond that, the image on the other side is the inside of this Cultural Heritage Museum, which is these collectible, like it's art from ranging in price from like local crafts that were handmade all the way up to really fine art made by local Tanzanians. So it was a really neat way to kind of dive into the culture a little bit and get a chance to see all of this really cool art. And felt like a museum. I mean, it like spiraled up and
it was a really cool building.
The building itself was beautiful. So from there, we had a traditional Tanzanian lunch that you eat with your hands.
Was amazing. So they bring out polenta, they bring out all of these dishes in front of you, and then they don't bring out utensils. So they teach you take the polenta, you play with it in your hands, and then you use that and you grab a bit of the meat, a bit of the vegetables, and it was amazing. Like one of the best meals I remember having in the country. It was very authentic. So and we had that in the city of Arusha with the local people. It wasn't a tourist stop. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. And then we wanted to include the shot. It happened to be clear up. You know, we were like, we want to see Kili. And it just so happened to clear up in that moment. So this is our photo of Kilimanjaro. So after our day exploring Arusha, we went to Arusha Coffee Lodge. So this is a luxury option in Arusha, as you can see by the image. It is an actual working plantation for coffee. So it is surrounded by coffee plants. It's really just beautiful and very well appointed.
Yeah,
and they offer a lot of variety of activities. So one of the things that we did when we woke up in the morning is we went on a coffee tour where we went and picked all the different types.
So he showed us the berries, and then you open them up and you pick the red ones are the best to pick. You open them up, it shows the beans inside.
So there's one or two.
Yeah. and then we got to go through the roasting process and just got to spend a morning diving into a little bit more of the local culture. We got to sample the coffee. It was delicious. It was
so good.
But before we headed out on safari, this was like our fun little morning before our continued adventure.
Yep. So then we were off to Serengeti. So this was about a 3 to 4 hour drive outside of Arusha, mostly tarmac roads. And then when you get into the park, it starts turning into dirt roads. It was a beautiful, easy drive. It was scenic and we really enjoyed it. And once we landed into the park, we had a game drive before we could even get to our accommodation because the accommodation is located in the park. So a little bit more about Serengeti specifically. It is part of the Northern Safari Circuit in Tanzania. So it's close to the Great Rift Valley, close to Lake Manyara, which is known for those large flocks of pink flamingos. Large herds of elephants, lots and lots of elephants.
And Diane, I know you just asked how long was the drive to Serengeti. So it's around 3 hours from Arusha, straight shot. It's a really easy drive. Some people fly, they do have an airstrip, but honestly, the drive was smooth and we got to see so much along the way that I would highly recommend it. Driving instead of flying.
I agree. I think the overland side of the safari in East Africa really, it gives you a picture of what the whole country is as a whole, not just the national parks, which are important, but So this is, we traveled in June, which was just after the rainy season. And I think what was so striking about it was the wildflowers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were wildflowers for days.
Covering the fields. And they are, the specific white wildflowers that were there are a delicacy to elephants. So we saw these mass herds that were eating them up as fast as they could, which was really spectacular, because when you go further in the summer, it's usually a bit more dry, and you don't get quite that full experience.
Agreed. Yeah.
With the flowers.
And there's a complete variety of animals in Serengeti. This one we wanted to include because in the reserve that we were at, which we'll talk about in a bit, there's actually an albino giraffe, which is a really rare sighting. You can see him there.
His name is Omo. He is super sweet, and we did a quick game drive through this region, and he actually came out for the first time they had seen him in weeks. And which was a really special treat.
It's always exciting when the guide's like, wow, I haven't seen this in a while, because they're like living and eating and breathing in the bush all the time.
Right.
So Whitney just asked, are you allowed to stop and take photos? So yeah, absolutely. The beautiful thing again about this overland safari where you're in a vehicle with a private guide is that the pace is the pace you want.
Right.
So we stopped and met a local Maasai boy along the way, where he interacted with him and we got to take photos. Sometimes you got to take a bathroom break. It takes you as long as it needs to take you.
Yeah. I remember there was one day we were on a drive and we saw a leopard tortoise, which was really unique, and he was just kind of hanging out. We had been moving for a long time, and so our guide was like, let's just stop and watch this tortoise. And so we hung out there for like 25 minutes. And it was just however long we wanted to spend to get the photo, to enjoy the wildlife in their natural setting. There's absolutely no rush to the day. There's we've got 30 minutes, we got to be somewhere. There's no time or clock on safari.
And what's kind of nice about that is the more time you spend with the animal, the more you get to know about their behaviors and their habits and learn about them. So.
Right. So Chem Chem.
So yeah, on to Chem Chem. This was one of our favorite stops.
So Chem Chem, this was my very first safari, was Tanzania. Chem Chem was our very first safari lodge, and I drank the Kool-Aid at Chem Chem. Like, it changed my life. It opened my eyes to a whole new way of living, and I never wanted to come back after this point. Like, the food was incredible and gourmet, but like the service and the people were so above and beyond, and just overjoyed to take you on whatever adventure, whatever activity, take you to see whatever wildlife, local culture. Like, they have tons of activities there.
Yeah. So these images from a walking safari. I got up and did a run with the Maasai warrior at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right along Lake Minyara.
Yeah, right along.
Really beautiful.
It was beautiful. And they cater to your safari your way. So you are typically in a small group, a private group. If you want to go at this time, you go at that time. If there's no, again, the private driver thing really helps, but it definitely, these guys, they've got service down to a T.
Yeah.
So this image is actually, they drove us out to the lake, which you can't see, it's on the other side. We're enjoying a beautiful sunset. Behind Abigail's head is a bar that they set up for us.
A portable bar that was in the back of the safari vehicle. He pulls it out, he sets it up.
Yeah.
It had both of our favorite drinks. It had snacks, and it was like this picture perfect sunset.
Yeah, and they taught us how to make a fire. So it's there's very authentic cultural interactions with Maasai warriors here as well.
Angelina, Chem Chem is not a wilderness safaris camp. They're actually an independent property.
Yeah. And they actually, what's neat about Chem Chem and what I think is special about them is that they actually converted the conservancy that they're on into what used to be a hunting conservancy, and now it is just for conservation, and they actually pay fees as if they were a hunting conservancy, but they are not. So they also have, Chem Chem has 3 different properties. So depending on who you are and what you like, one might fit you better than the other. We were touring, and I thought this was interesting. They had these little guys who were super friendly and were loving on us like crazy.
The mongoose lived in camp. They found them. The mongoose hung out near camp, and so they like to interact with the guests.
Yeah, we had a blast. So then we went, you can see where C is actually where Chem Chem is located. So it's on Lake Minyara, but Serengeti National Park is now where we're driving into. So at this point, we were on a private conservancy, but from Chem Chem, you can do trips into the national park. And what makes a national park different is that it has different rules. So there's no off-roading. However, you can do night drives and you can do walking safaris, provided the weather's, weather dependent.
Right.
So then we ended up at Oliver's Camp, which is located in the park. There aren't very many other camps around it. We felt like it was very secluded, very private. They offer, like I mentioned, the walking safaris here. And again, back to the wildlife we mentioned earlier, that's where you would get a chance to go out on your game drives.
Right.
Next.
And then we journeyed to Karatu.
Yeah.
So we left Tarangire National Park and we headed on the main road. We passed a couple of villages, one of them being Mtuombu, which is one of
that was really good.
Thank you. So Mtuombu it's a village that has almost all tribes in Tanzania represented. So it's just like this huge cultural hub near Lake Minyara. It has really incredible and authentic experiences there. And then you can continue on to Karatu, which is probably the next largest town beyond Arusha. So you get to see like this little bit of a bustling town, and then they have farmlands where they have several properties that are situated
outside of the national park where Ngorongoro Crater is, which is where we were headed next. So we were in this farm area township outside of the national park. So our first accommodation we stopped at was the Manor. It was a lovely farmhouse. It is kind of got that colonial vibe. We were so impressed with the size of the room. It was huge.
Huge room.
Yeah. And they also have a bunch of horses. So you can go at any age, you can go and do some horseback riding here, which was really cool to kind of tour. Fabulous masseuse, all that good stuff. Great accommodation.
Great spa.
And you can see kind of in terms of where Karatu is at the bottom corner of that. And then all of that green is the actual Ngorongoro Crater Conservation Area. And once you enter into the conservation area, you actually have a permit that allows you into the park for a certain period of time. And this was actually formed by a large volcano that erupted and then collapsed on itself a million years ago or beyond. So this is actually a picture we took. Yeah. Which I was like, wow, that's really, and it's beautiful. I mean, it really looks like this. And it surprised us with just how scenic and beautiful it really was. It is a national park, so there's no off-road.
They usually recommend that you keep your windows closed because those baboons know that there are snacks in your vehicle, and they will join you to get those snacks.
Yes, at any cost.
We keep our windows closed, and then you drive up to the crater rim and you stop for that incredible view that we saw. Yep. And then to actually get on safari, you have to go through the crater rim and then you descend.
Below the clouds even.
Yeah, so you're above the clouds, you drive down below, and then you're just in this paradise essentially. They have this really incredible lake, and there's almost every member of the Big Five represented.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great chance to see rhino, but it's a maybe, right? So if you see it, you get really lucky. Yeah. But
which we fortunately were very lucky. He came out and visited one of the only places. One of the only places in Tanzania to actually see rhino.
We have the best chance, yeah. So typically, Ngorongoro Crater is done in one day. You would stay 2 nights in an accommodation nearby, and then you would spend a full day down in the crater to pack lunch or maybe even a hot lunch. As you can see from the video, people typically say, oh, it's crowded. Yes,
didn't like that too much.
There can be a lot of vehicles, but what's great about it is that if you have a private vehicle, you are able to kind of navigate and get around those large groups, because the guide was he got us in early.
Right.
I mean, it felt like we had the park to ourselves for a good bit, but
which was great.
These lions were amazing.
Yeah. So Holly, you asked a question about vehicles. Yes, the vehicle we were in is what you should expect. So because of the rules of the national parks, the dust, you've got a lot of dust driving around. They are roofed vehicles, but they have pop tops. So you can tell in the back of this video, that you pop up your top, you can see Liz there, you can take camera shots from above, but then otherwise while you're driving, they close the tops and you can open up the windows.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't think that it hindered from the experience too much.
It was kind of nice to be able to close it up.
Yeah, but it gets very warm and very dusty. So we were grateful to have those, the enclosed vehicle. And so then the Highlands.
Yep. So then we were on to the Highlands, which is located on the other side, like the northern side of the crater region. It is a pretty high elevation. Right. So what makes the high elevation so great is that the stargazing is phenomenal. It's super cozy. And I have to, I say this all the time. This is one of the most authentic cultural experiences I've ever had in Africa. There's a local village nearby that they have a relationship with. So you take this gorgeous scenic walk through the Highlands, and they take you into a village where you get to interact, and they have a translator, and you get to ask the questions, and they take you into their home. This is a photo of the elder. The kids are out, tending to the sheep, and you actually get to walk into their home and learn about their culture,
learn about their daily life. Yeah. So the land surrounding. Oh yeah, you can go to that. So the land surrounding that Ngorongoro crater is the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, and that's all Maasai land and farmland. So there's a lot of villages dotted throughout, some really authentic experiences to go in and visit and really connect with the people, and stunning views, like rolling hills. It was like
beautiful,
take your breath away, gorgeous.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it.
Absolutely worth the visit too. I mean, it was gorgeous. I think at one point I even said, do you think that they realize just how beautiful the land that they live in is? Because they've probably never traveled within 10, 15 miles of their little home, and the weather is temperate. I mean, it's beautiful. So then we went on to Entamanu, which is another property, as you can see, on the other side of the crater. And it actually borders, you've got views of the crater on one side, the surrounding highlands, and then the Serengeti just behind it. Entamanu was a classic tented camp. It was cozy, it was warm. I loved, I thought this was a cool image of waking up in the fog.
And you do, when you're on the rim of the crater, there are multiple properties that are dotted right along the rim. And when you're on that rim, you're literally in the clouds in the morning and in the evening, which is so special. And then we headed to the Serengeti. Yep,
onto the Serengeti. So we're still driving at this point. We drive into the southern Serengeti, and along the way, we made a stop at Olduvai Gorge, which was one of those things that doesn't typically get included on a standard itinerary, but I think it bears worth mentioning. It actually has the earliest evidence of the existence of human ancestors. So they found hundreds of fossilized bones that date back to millions of years, and there are currently different colleges that are constantly doing excavation there. You may be familiar with the archaeologists Lewis and Mary Leakey, and they discovered 4 different types of hominids. So this is just some images. There's this incredible museum. They do a presentation for you, and it's just something so very different than safari, but totally worth the stop if you've got the time.
And when you're staying in the southern Serengeti and you're driving from the Ngorongoro crater, it's a really easy stop to maneuver along the way. It's difficult to visit when you're not driving, and so because we drove past it, we got to stop in it, and then we also got to stop at the shifting sands.
It was so cool. So these are 2 crescent-shaped sand dunes, but they're magnetized volcanic ash. And what's so crazy about it is they move. Like they've been moving, the scientists are saying up to 3 million years that these clumps of sand, dunes of sand are just moving. And in so much that if you grab a handful of the sand and you throw it up, it'll actually clump back together and then fall back down into the dune instead of blowing away. So this is a really unique stop too. And they've got like mile markers along the way. So you can see like, oh, in 2017 it was here. So it was a neat little stop for us to get out and stretch our legs and see something unique. As we continued on into the southern Serengeti, which basically the southern Serengeti is known for where the wildebeest will calve. So in the earlier months of the year, that's where all the wildebeest migration goes to have their babies.
Right. So you've got like November, December, all the way through into like March, April, almost June. You've got those herds of wildebeest there. Yep. They're having babies. They're just kind of hanging out in these flatlands. And then because of those wildebeest, it also attracts some of the bigger cats, some of the predators. So we got to see incredible lion. This was the first place on the trip. I remember it distinctly. The first place that we saw lion cubs. Oh. And it was just like life-changing to see these sweet little babies. And then we got to see the leopard in the tree. And fun fact, so you sometimes hear a little bit about the tree climbing lion, which we saw quite a bit between Tarangire and the Serengeti. And essentially because it gets so warm in the Serengeti between Tanzania and even Kenya, the lions climb up in the tree to get as much of a breeze as they can because it's a little bit cooler and get away from the flies. And so this is some of the only parts of the world where lion actually climb up in the trees and hang out for the afternoon.
So cool to see him up there too. And this cheetah, we actually sat and had our lunch while the cheetah had its lunch. So that was
interesting experience.
So when we're on to Kusini Camp, which is still located in the southern Serengeti, but there's no other camps around it. It makes for a great spot if you are after seeing the calves of the migration, but still fantastic game viewing other times of the year. Right. They actually have an excursion to cave paintings. It's a beautiful tented camp, as you can see.
It's built into like a rock kopie, so you can climb on top of the rocks, get a beautiful sunrise, sunset, have a sundowner drink.
Right. So then we drove on to the central Serengeti. We covered a lot. We covered the entire Serengeti, actually, which you'll see as we go through. Yeah. The central Serengeti is known for big herds of cats and resident wildlife all year round. So, but also, again, an opportunity to see the migration depending on what month you happen to be there. Really, you can see the migration any time of year. So this is a cool one. You remember this?
Yeah, this was incredible. So we woke up early in the morning. We had a really long drive that day, and we come out of camp, and there was this lioness, and she was at first walking with cubs, and then her cubs disappeared. And so Ayub stopped, and he was like, something good's gonna happen. Let's hang out and see. And he knew what was happening. We had no idea. But there was actually a young male lion who was coming up, and he was trying to overstep his boundaries into her territory, into her cubs' territory. And so she hid her cubs, and she walks just in the opposite direction of the cubs to distract him, and she starts alerting him. So she doesn't actually roar, but she just she showed her teeth, and she kind of gnarled a little bit, and just alerting him like, hey,
back off,
you're coming too close. And so we watched him. He tried to walk a little bit closer, and then he ended up turning around and walking away. Yeah, do not cross Mama Lioness.
We had a chance to see some more cheetah.
And the Serengeti is incredible for cheetah because they like wide open plains, so they can see predators coming and they can run quickly. So cheetah.
I'm gonna let this video play with the sound because I know it goes over us, but it makes it kind of cool to see how.
Awesome. Oh, look at that. I have to go on the other side.
So lots of lions climbing up in trees, as Abigail mentioned. Now I'm gonna let this video play for just a couple minutes because
I'm gonna hide.
I think it's worth mentioning because we talk about the lions and the leopards and the cheetah and the rhino and all of that, but there are lots of animals that you don't really think of when you think of safari, maybe off the top of your head. And so this is an incredibly rare sighting. It's a black-back spitting cobra, and you can see this family of mongoose basically challenging this this cobra.
They're dwarf mongoose too.
Oh, yes.
So they're the little guys, and this cobra.
So I'm just
very brave, very brave.
What's that mongoose is doing there? You don't want to see it?
So what you can't see in that video is that it's a very long video, but he actually like stands up and his hood comes out and like the mongoose are jumping and dancing, and Abigail's like, but why are they getting close?
No. granted, snakes are my least favorite thing on the planet. And so stopping to watch a snake is, I could not have been far enough. And that snake was a little bit too close to our camp.
Inside our completely enclosed vehicle that he couldn't get into. But anyways.
And so we went to bed that night. We woke up the next morning and we had this really, really spectacular morning planned, which was our hot air balloon safari.
Yes. So everyone always sees the images of the hot air balloons flying over the Serengeti, and we needed to experience that. So the image that you see with my little eyeball in the corner is, I wanted to put that in there so that you could see what you don't realize if you've never been in a hot air balloon is that you actually start laying on your back. So you're in this little bucket and you're laying on your back, and then all of a sudden it inflates and off you go. Oh, I didn't realize this was a video. So it was really beautiful. It was a very early morning, and you're leaving before the sun's even up, but you're watching these balloons inflate as the sun is coming up.
Right.
And then off you go, floating over. I know, it was magical.
So, right. So you leave your camp when it's dark outside, and you get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. You head out, and then by the time you're up in the air, the sun comes up.
Yeah. Oh, there's another image of it. And then it ends basically. So you float for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depends on where the wind takes you.
Right.
And then you land and you have this incredible bush breakfast with a champagne toast, and you get a certificate. So it's a really unique way to have a game viewing experience outside of a vehicle.
Right. And so you get to see the overtop view. So like in the video, we saw pods of hippos in the river. We also got to see a herd or a pack of hyenas that we almost landed on top of. Well, as we were coming down,
we're a little close.
We're in the middle of the bush, and there's hyenas running around all over us. And yeah, it was cool. We got to spot like a lion on top of a kopi rock.
Yeah.
And completely different perspective from what you're used to seeing in a vehicle on the ground.
Yep, absolutely. So then we went off to Dunia Camp, and this camp is a really special camp because it is run by all women. It is one of the first of its kind in Africa. The camp manager, Angel, is there, and they are just welcoming you with song and dance, and they're so caring, and it's a pioneering kind of camp, so worth mentioning, and was absolutely worth the visit too.
Right. And so if you've ever been on safari, you notice that a lot of the guides, a lot of the managers, they're all men. So it's a very male dominant industry. And this camp was the first that they have a female manager, they have female guides, they have female staff, and they sing songs as you enter, and they just sort of welcome you into their home. And it was really, really unique. It's an Acilia property, which we visited quite a bit of their properties.
Yep.
And I highly recommend it. Good location.
Yeah, definitely. So and that region, again, known for like big cats, large prides of lions and herds, that sort of thing. All right, so on to the next part of the Serengeti is Grumeti,
which is in the western corridor. So if you're thinking about the Serengeti, it's like northwest.
Yep. And it's a conservancy. So different rules here apply in that you can do off-roading, you can do night drives, you can do walking safaris. It is privately, managed and protected, other than a national park. And the national parks do a great job too. It's just this one is, because it's a private conservancy, you have a little bit more flexibility while you're on the ground.
They also limit the number of people that are allowed on the conservancy. So you don't see as many vehicles driving around.
So that's a video of Singita, which is the property that we stayed at. They have the most properties on the Grumeti, and that's their private airstrip that they have that you actually fly into. Huge attention to service and detail and customer service here. I mean, just hospitality abounds in the Singita brand.
Out of this world.
Like the most luxury property that we visited.
Right. So if you're looking for 5 stars, Singita's it.
Yeah.
Like it is the best of the best when it comes to that. And on the Grumeti concession, which is their own, they have 3 different camps that are vastly different. So you've got one camp that's a little bit more colonial, but then of course they have all of this wildlife that we essentially got to enjoy by ourselves, because there are not very many people on this concession at all.
We spent an entire evening watching a pride of lions and lion babies play.
Yeah.
And this is
Climb the trees.
Yeah, this is a cool video.
Another thief is kind of teaching, so they're just shuffling them, trying to bite something that is a little
So
bit
they're
tough.
like teething.
Yes.
They're not, but
The little one's like, what are you guys doing?
Take the picture.
I'm videoing it.
we must have spent
An hour, 2
yeah,
hours.
an hour or 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
watching these guys all the way as they were teaching each other how to climb up a tree.
Right.
And then while the sun is setting for us. I mean, it
Right.
was spectacular,
Yeah.
intimate moment with this
Mhm.
pride of lions.
And it's really the epitome of safari is you're going out, the sun is setting. Like I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I remember the breeze blowing. I remember the smells. I remember the giggles as we're trying to take all of these pictures of these little lion cubs, and they could care less that we were there.
Nope.
They didn't notice us. They were just playing and having fun, and the mamas were sleeping and then
Couldn't be bothered.
Right, could not be bothered by any of it. And then we drove just a little bit away and we had our sundowners and the sunset, and we popped out and we had a gin and tonic, and it was
Amazing.
just one of the best days.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight for us, for sure. So a bit more about Serengeti Sasakwa, which is one of the properties that Singita owns that we stayed at.
Mhm.
It's perched on this, oh, another video. Let's see if it cuts out.
The Green Wilderness Migration.
So that just gives you kind of a glimpse of the beauty with the dramatic music of what Grumeti and Sasakwa has to offer. And Grumeti is really the best time to see the migration would be around June.
June, July, sometimes August, depending on how
Depending on-
slow the migration's moving that
Depending on what they
year.
decide to do that year. But as you can see, Sasakwa's perched up on this ledge, and it's just got these sweeping views of the Serengeti below you. I have a picture of Abigail just like that. The quality wasn't as good. Let me tell you, we were here for 2 nights, and it was a dream.
So
You
perfect.
have these private plunge pools, and at one point I was working on my laptop, and there was a baboon drinking out of our pool, and it was just,
I remember that.
yeah, they're
You and the
phenomenal.
baboon hung out for the
We did.
afternoon.
We did.
And another thing to mention about Singita is not only do they have these incredible camps, they're very luxurious, their attention to detail is out of this world, but they are also super hyper focused on the Singita Grumeti Fund and helping the community and helping the wildlife.
Yeah.
So they have anti-poaching units that you can actually visit and learn from them and ask them questions. They have scouts that monitor their land constantly, and they're doing a rhino project right now.
Right, they just flew when we were there. They were
Yeah.
getting ready to fly in a rhino from California,
San Diego
from
Zoo.
San Diego Zoo,
Mhm.
to be with their lion that they have, or
Their
lion,
lion.
their rhino that is enclosed, in hopes for them to mate and make more baby rhinos.
Mhm.
So they're really on the forefront of conservation and protecting the animals and the land.
Yeah.
Um,
And then further to that, collaborating with the community.
Mm.
So the community nearby, they just recently had a women's run
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're supporting the local women's rights, they're supporting the local people, and they had like a 5K
Right.
around the Grumeti concession that sometimes some people can actually go out and participate in, or you can donate and support them virtually through this run.
Yep.
So Singita is doing so much good, and we love being a part of it and supporting it and encouraging it.
Yeah, there's so many initiatives. We could talk about it for an hour. So we would recommend, if that's something you're passionate about, shoot us an email or just look them up. I mean,
Right.
they've got an entire website dedicated to what the initiatives that they have when it comes to conservation. So
Right.
pretty incredible.
And it's all on site. So even if you wanted to spend an afternoon, skip a game drive and go and visit with their conservation team,
Yep.
they would be delighted to show you the behind the scenes at all of those things.
Absolutely. Okay, so from the Grumeti, we then moved on to the Northern Serengeti. This was bittersweet for us because we said goodbye to Ayub,
Right.
because this is our first flight of the journey. That would have been too long for us to drive. So off we flew to the Northern Serengeti. Now this is, other than the Mara, this is the spot where you hear about these dramatic river crossings for the wildebeest migration.
Mm-hmm.
It is also Big Five. There's an opportunity to see all of the wildlife, but this is what people typically, when they think migration,
Right.
what they see. And it's situated along the Mara River, kind of divides.
Mm-hmm. And it would be summertime. So most people go here for the migration anytime July through September-ish.
Yep.
They cross the Mara River into Kenya, and then they actually come back across the Mara River into Tanzania again, into this northern Serengeti region. Absolutely stunning, tons of rock copies. So you don't get as much flat, open savanna plains,
Yeah.
but you do get really beautiful rock formations and lots of lion in this area, lots
Yeah.
of other predators. We had great leopard viewing,
We did.
beautiful properties, beautiful camps.
It's also the busiest part of the Serengeti too,
Right.
so it's important to mention that, I think, just because there are a lot of properties around and it is a national park.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that we stayed out called Lamai Serengeti. A really, truly lovely property. Really enjoyed it. They had the thing about the properties too is the camp managers are always coming out and engaging with you and learning about you, and they know your name. And I think it's really incredible the way that you feel like you're home, no matter the level of luxury of the accommodation. You
Right.
just truly feel like you're being brought home.
And you feel like your family.
Yeah.
We have a question. Mary asked, at this point, how many days have you been on your trip? At this point, we were around day 15. So
Yeah.
we were just over halfway of our Tanzania trip.
Yeah.
We spent the bulk of the time in the Serengeti. But yeah, this was halfway point for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was, which was great
Right.
because we were in the Northern Serengeti. Okay, so Sayari, this is another property that we stopped at. It's actually recently been refurbed. It was beautiful before, and now it's even more beautiful.
Stunning.
Popular permanent tented camp.
Mm-hmm. Has an incredible location. So it's situated around the rock copies, like we mentioned. But I distinctly remember Sayari because I remember us having our doors open with the netting closed.
Oh, yes.
And we could hear lion calling.
That's right.
In the middle of the night, you could hear them calling around our tent. They were walking through camp,
Yeah.
and you were just totally in the bush, and this pride of lion that lived around.
It was just coming to say hi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You were definitely in the bush, which is why you don't walk out at night by yourself.
Exactly.
Ever on safari. All right, so finally, and bittersweet again, we journey out of the Serengeti, and now we're going to head over to Lake Victoria,
Mm-hmm.
which is the largest lake,
Right.
and we flew to Rubundo Island, which is the largest national park island. And they actually, at Rubundo, went through an entire process of rehabituating chimpanzees here. So they brought them in from various places and they rehabituated them on the land, as well as ellies and giraffes. And you fly out to this island and it felt like Jurassic Park.
Right. Jurassic Park was probably the best way that we
Yeah.
could explain it. It was so vastly different from anything else any other place that we saw.
Totally.
It was nothing like safari, but then you would round a corner in the middle of this jungle and there would be an elephant.
Right.
in the jungle.
On an island.
Right.
So it's important to know this is definitely a habituation experience.
Right.
So
they're not quite used to people yet. So you can trek,
Yep.
and we did trek for 2 days, but it's not 100% guaranteed
to see them.
that you'll see them or get to hang out with them. I mean, we saw one guy run by, but he wasn't comfortable enough to let us near him.
Yeah.
But the hiking on its own, like to get out of the safari vehicle, to get on land, and we hiked around this island.
I've got some images towards the end that I'll show you that'll give you a better picture of what that looks like. This is the property that we stayed at in Robundo, which is right on.
There's one camp.
Yeah.
On the entire island, there's one property.
And it's located right on the lake. So they also, beyond the chimp trekking experiences that you have, they also have a boat. I learned how to fish. Abigail learned how to drive a boat. We spent a lot of time out on the water because imagine we had just gotten out of this, dusty vehicles and we were hot and we were dusty, and now we're like, we're on a boat. So Abigail caught this ginormous Nile perch, which they actually served us for dinner that night. So
the
like
following night.
The following night. Okay, so caught and served. Truly just really, really unique island experience. So they had this fire pit going every night. You'd sit around, you'd have your sundowners.
You'd have your dinner near the fire pit.
Very toes in the sands, safari jungle.
Right. So safari. So you're still in nature, but you're getting out and you're doing other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a bit more of the images of our actual trek. So we load into the vehicle, which actually got stuck, which was an adventure in and of itself. So the guys are out there like trying to pry it out. Abigail hates snakes. I hate spiders. Those are spider webs.
And they're as large as a human person.
Or
these
bigger.
spider webs were huge.
Yeah.
We ran by those really quickly. We kept trekking. We had trackers and guides with us. So we had a whole team of people.
And as you can tell by my expression, you're working for it, but it was a lot of fun and we made the best of it. We even had a chance to pay attention to some of the smaller things. Abigail, when he came up with this bug and was like, look.
Right. And then we found a chameleon, which
he climbed all over us.
He climbed all over us and changed colors, and it was so cool.
We had a blast. We had such a blast. We ended up staying a second night, unintentionally, just because we were like, we need to give this more time. This has been phenomenal. So one of those places that you don't typically see on a circuit, but we highly recommend. And as we get into the last two locations on our trip, how I mentioned that Serengeti is kind of that northern circuit in the crater.
The most common.
Right.
I think when people go to Tanzania, they think about Serengeti, they have to go to Ngorongoro crater, and then they have to go to the Serengeti.
Right.
And then they usually stop there.
Yep, or they try and add on Kenya as well. Sometimes people will pop over into Kenya. So we wanted to highlight the areas that are less frequented, or maybe your second safari stop. So from Robundo being the first one, we then moved on to Ruaha down in the south. And this park is huge. It is tons of huge baobab trees, a vast variety of wilderness, sand rivers that you're kind of driving in and around. As we're rolling in, this image all the way on the far side, I want to say the left, maybe it's the right for you guys, but that's actually an African ball python that was hanging out in the tree. And I thought it was, our guide was like, check it out, that's so cool. We actually ran into one of those in Robundo, but I saved you the pain of replaying that video. This guy was like this big, and Abigail went running, and I was like, let me get closer. But that's fine, they're safe.
Whitney asked really quickly, she asked, going back to the spiders, if we had any issues while in tented camps or running through them while on safari. So in all honesty, you are in the bush, you're in the wild, you're in Africa.
Bugs are gonna happen.
Yeah, bugs are gonna happen. I don't remember running into too many spiders, except we did see a couple at Robundo. Around the camp, I actually had two in my room, and they weren't dangerous, but I grabbed my flashlight, I flashed the
radio back to the head area.
Back to the head area. Some guy came out, he literally picked him up by its leg and he flung it out, and I never had any issues after that.
Yeah. So you're sleeping under the nets too, which will help you protect you from the mosquitoes, that kind of thing. You also have, if you don't want to radio or flash for somebody to come and rescue you, there's also bug killer in the rooms too, and there's bug spray provided in the room. So if you just happen across somebody who's making you uncomfortable, you just give them a little spritz and
you have to spray.
You move on.
And that's like, I don't love bugs. I don't necessarily want to hang out with them in my room, and I never really felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, me either.
That was, you can always call someone, or you've got the spray. Never had any really uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. So we are in Ruaha. It was a brief moment for us, but we were there one night. But we did get a chance to have some pretty incredible game viewing experiences. And you can do night drives here, which I think is kind of cool too. So you have the option to do night drives, which isn't as frequently available in other parts of Tanzania.
So you think about southern Tanzania, Ruaha is this huge park, and not very many people visit it. So you have very few camps, which means that you go out on game drive and you practically see no one. Yeah. Like, you see wildlife, but you're not seeing other vehicles. You're not seeing other people. It's just you and the animals. Because it's a giant national park, they don't really have the villages or the cultural experiences. Yeah. But it is also very dry because it's in the south. So it gets very, very, very warm. And which was manageable.
It was. And the lodges, which we'll talk about, we stayed at Jabali. They're all designed in a way to make it as comfortable as possible for you, taking into consideration the environment that you happen to be in. Right. So Jabali, as you can see, had slatted, every wall was slatted. So you could open it up and you could get some fresh breeze. And it really was stunning. That is one room with that sitting area outside.
They have a hammock on your wraparound deck. They have a hammock that you can open the doors and you can lay there. You've got your lounge area. And Jabali is also built into the rock copies that are commonly found in this area. So it best utilizes that breeze that flows through.
Yep, that's right.
It's all focused on the land itself and not damaging that land, but enhancing it for other people to experience and just enjoy being in the bush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of bush breakfasts, bush dinners.
Yeah, they gave us a bush lunch on our way out, remember? It was lovely. So then we moved on to the Selous, which again, another lesser traveled to park or game reserve in Tanzania. And this is different because of the water and the water experiences here. So you've got lakes and you've got rivers and you've got spillways and waterways and that sort of thing, in addition to the actual land safari portion of the trip.
So quick question from Kevin. He asked about food. So are there vegetarian options for meals? I would say safari is probably the best when it comes to accommodating different dietary requirements. Yeah. So they do vegetarian really, really well. They ask you beforehand. So before you even get on safari, before you get to your camps, they know what you're allergic to. They know what you like and what you don't like. And they prepare your meals accordingly. Absolutely. So if you're vegetarian, they prep. I've traveled before with a woman who was vegan, and she said that was she had some of the best vegan meals she's ever had on safari. While we were eating, maybe an ostrich fillet, she was having this incredible risotto that was changing her life.
So good.
So incredible vegetarian options.
They even can cater to specific allergies if you are
allergic to nuts or shellfish,
or if you keep kosher. There are even places that can accommodate that too. So they do a really good job. So Selous, it has a variety of wildlife that you can experience.
And actually one of the very, very rare places in Tanzania that you can see wild dog, which is more common in Southern Africa. We unfortunately didn't get to see wild dog, but they showed up near our camp the day after we left. So what were we going to do?
I included, we talk again about all of the big animals that you think about, you see on safari. And this frog, I wanted to shoot an image of. You can see him there, the little white guy. There is such a diversity, and the guides do a really great job of not only teaching you about the animals, big and small, but the land and the trees and the plants and the flowers and the different types of animal poop and how the ecosystem really just lives together. So I think that's what that really stood out to me in a specific place, because I was seeing, we've been on safari at this point for 18 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was really unique to be able to see something so completely different than the big game, which was fabulous,
Right.
but still something so completely different.
Right.
This was on our, we took a boat tour and or we took a boat ride, and this little guy was like only a couple of months old. Our guide
He
said.
was a couple of weeks
A
old.
couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, he was so tiny.
So little baby hippo there, and mom hanging out in the river. So as Liz mentioned, the Selous has lots of water, but they have both rivers and lakes. And so you can go on your boating safari. You can also travel down the river, and you can see we passed through a gorge.
Yeah, well, I
we
think
stopped and had a
slides on that.
picnic.
Yeah.
But it also brings incredible wildlife like birding.
Great birding.
Great birding.
So as we're driving to our camp, our guide takes us and is telling us about these hot springs. Now, again, we've been on safari for quite a bit, so we're like, take us to something different, you know, and new and exciting. And these are actually, they're volcanic hot springs that don't have any lava flowing underneath them, but they're warm. And so our guide's saying to it, you know, we're walking over there and we're touching it, and it feels like a jacuzzi, like a sauna. And the guide's like, yeah, people actually jump in there. And I'm like, no, they didn't. And he's like, yeah, go for it. And I'm like, okay.
One.
Oh my God.
2, 3.
Oh, did I pause it?
What?
So I went first.
Very warm though, like you are jumping into a hot tub that is in nature. So you've got some algae that your feet are touching. You've got some rocks below.
It's a little slippery.
But it's like 100+ degrees in there.
Yeah.
But completely worth it, because the Selous is also very warm.
Yep.
And so you jump in there, it's hot, and you get out, and you're so cool.
Yeah.
And so we drove the rest of the afternoon.
Soaked.
Yeah, soaked.
But it was fun.
Yeah, in an open vehicle, we had the breeze. Oh, it was so refreshing. And I know some people some people have taken a picnic to the hot springs.
Yeah.
They've camped out for an afternoon. They've spent time swimming. Like they've made a day of it.
So while the Selous is also a safari destination, there are, again, very different, unique things that you can do. So we hop on a boat and we get taken to this sand island. And Abigail was quite amused because I really wanted to catch a fish because I never had before. And as you can see, I was not so amused with the fish. But our guides,
it was slimy.
It was so
I remember you
gross.
saying it was so slimy.
But our guides, you know, we got to know them there, again, as you do in any place, and they're there and they're engaging and they're asking you questions and they're learning just as much about us as we are about them. So it's this symbiotic sharing of like just culture with each other. And so we go out to the sandbar and we just spent an afternoon while the sun set trying to catch fish. And it was one of the most beautiful and relaxing moments where we're like, oh my gosh, our trip is almost over.
Right. and it was also one of those really sweet moments where the guide in the back who was fishing with us, his name is Promise, and he spent the day with us, got to know us. We had dinner together, we did our game drives, and he's one of those people that we exchanged numbers with, Instagrams, and we still keep up with him today. Like I was just messaging him the other day, seeing how their camps were doing and how wildlife is, and so it's really unique.
So I'm going to go back to this one. As Abigail mentioned, we took a boat tour down this gorge, which has all of these rocks on the side, and you go down this incredible gorge, and they stopped and they made a picnic lunch for us where we're rock hopping and just relaxing. I don't know why. Let me see if I can get this play. So super, super peaceful. Here we stayed at Sand River Selous, which is so unique in that it's completely open. Yeah. So they actually have a little box in your room, which is to prevent them. You have to like lock up your toothbrush and your hairbrush in it, because sometimes the monkeys will just like come in and snatch your stuff. But I never at any moment felt unsafe. And it's perched right on the edge of the water with this kind of Robinson Crusoe barefoot luxury kind of style.
Very barefoot, very comfortable. We hung out with a lot of honeymooners here.
Yeah.
I remember that we had dinner with like a table of honeymooners of different couples. And so pretty romantic, but also very open.
So open.
And you're in the wildlife.
But you're feeling, again, the Selous is warm, right? So that open design
breeze
allowed for the breeze to come in off the water and kind of cool you down. Okay, so then we moved on to another property in the slough, and what's different about this one versus the other one is that this one was, Sand River was located on the river, and the next property that we went to, Rojo Yasalu, is located more on a lake. So here very similar in terms of the activities. Walking safaris are available. This is a classic tented classic African tented camp. Fabulous, you can see the fans to cool you down.
The one thing that was different about Rojo was if you can see in the tent, all of the walls are netted. So although you are in this classic tented camp, it's all open, which means that lake that's just beyond the camp and the hippos, you can hear them playing in the lake all night long. And you can hear the hippos walking around your tent at night, which was very unique. I'm glad we did it at the end of the trip, because I think if it was my first day on safari, I would have been like, I wouldn't have been able to sleep. There are so many noises, but honestly, it was the noises that put me to sleep that night, because I was so comfortable in the bush by this point.
That's a really good point to make, because a lot of people ask that, do you feel safe? Do the sounds upset you or disturb you? And you don't have a radio, you don't have your TV, you're not, surrounded by the noise of the city or the cars driving by. It's just pure wildlife. And it can be a little unnerving at first, but then it kind of soothes you to sleep.
Yeah. It becomes very comfortable.
So here you can do walking safaris. We did a walking safari here, which was really interesting. We saw like a millipede, walking safaris are about the smaller stuff again. So the animals and the insects and the way that the plants talk to each other, the trees talk to each other, that kind of stuff. So
the way that things pollinate.
I highly always recommend getting out of the vehicle and doing a walking safari, because it gives you such a different perspective of the bush and how it all works together.
And don't forget that you are still technically in the bush, so you usually always have a ranger or a tracker that has a rifle just in case, not specifically for the animals, but to alert. So if you have an elephant that's charging, they're prepared to protect you and scare that elephant away. And they also have protocols that they teach you. So your guide goes first. You creep around bushes a little bit. He checks to make sure that there aren't any lions waiting. Single file line. And so you have those safety precautions, but you're still very much so in the bush with the wildlife. So I remember we rounded a corner and there was a giraffe off in the distance. And then we rounded another corner and there was actually a hyena that we saw on foot. We stayed plenty of distance.
Oh my gosh, and then it rained.
And then
we started singing Africa by Toto.
One of the most African moments I've ever had is singing Africa by Toto in the rain
on a walking
blessing
safari.
The rain in Africa.
It was pretty amazing. So Whitney, yes, the guides are all, so it depends. Typically, if you're flying from place to place, you'll utilize the guides in camp who are living there, living, eating, breathing the bush 3 months on, 1 month off. If you are doing the overland safari like we did at the beginning of the trip, then you'll have that one guide who is versed in everything.
They're a specialist
they're a specialist guide that knows more than just one region. And they'll be your guide for those game drives or those walks or whatever it might be. So these particular guides, yes, and there are different qualifications, because all of these guides have to go through testing
years
and that sort of
training
thing, and training,
and testing, and spending time in the bush in different regions to know all about it.
So there's you can be certified to be a driving ranger, you can be certified to be a walking ranger, you could be certified in both. So your game drive guide may not be the same one as the one who takes you on the walk, but they're all there in the camp and available for you. And
one activity that we haven't mentioned is fly camping, which is available. It's actually available in the slough. So the same places that you go on walking safari, there are guides that can become specialists in fly camping, which is actually camping. So they're building you a tent, you're building a campfire to cook your food. You have people with you, but you're camping out in the bush, and they're a specialist for that as well. That's one of those unique activities to get further out of.
On that island sandbar where you saw us fishing, where you could do that. So not necessarily, to answer your question, Whitney, it's not necessary. It doesn't always happen that the guide stays with you for the duration. However, if that's your preference, then that can be arranged. So it really just depends on what your preference is. If you want a private guide that goes with you from stop to stop, then that can be arranged.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're
it's
provided.
pretty easy for that to happen, for you to have the same guide with you throughout. Otherwise, the properties that we specifically work with, they have the best trained guides, and that was one of the things that we really experienced and fully understood by the end of it, was that all of the camps that we went to, their guides had years and years and years of experience, and they were all experts in the land and experts in the wildlife and that region, where they would say, hey, this mama that lives over here, she just had cubs, let's go hang out with her. They were active just the other day.
Right, because they're there all the time.
Right. And so I usually defer to the guides that are in camp. But again, those private guides are so knowledgeable. They can go on flights with you. They can drive you the whole way.
And they've likely guided in those
regions. It depends on what you want. Yeah. They've
likely guided in each of those regions before too, because you have to know all of the regions before you can become somebody who goes to all of them, right?
Right.
So this is it. This is the tail end of our trip. We flew from the Salou into Dar es Salaam. We had a 10-ish hour layover here. So instead of hanging out in the airport, which we heard was, it's a very African airport.
It didn't have a ton to offer.
Yeah.
So as far as like lounges and cafes, it had maybe, I think, 2 or 3 restaurants in the whole airport.
Yeah, so we got a car and at this point too, we've been flying. So when you're on safari, you can only take, especially in East Africa, it's 33 pounds with your carry-on and you're checked.
Right.
So we didn't get to do any shopping for anyone. So we hop in the car and we drove with our private guide to some shops and bought all of our goodies.
Some local markets. We went to a Maasai market. So some of the local peoples actually bring in handmade goods. And then we went to another market. And so
chasing down Bao, the game, like Mancala.
Mm-hmm.
And I added this image because it's so congested. The traffic in Dar is so congested. And we were so amused by the fact that they were selling ice cream on the side of the road. But they weren't just selling ice cream. They were selling
like hangers,
everything,
and maps and windshield wipers. And so Dar es Salaam is one of the largest cities in Tanzania. So we really got the feeling of this bustling business district. And we stopped in a guy selling ice cream on his bike multiple times, more than once in this 10-hour stint. I think we got ice cream 2 or 3 times,
totally.
Which was just so exciting and refreshing.
Best way to end the trip.
But yeah, got to do all of our shopping. Some people even spend a day or 2 in Dar es Salaam doing shopping, hanging out in the local area, and it is the gateway to get to Zanzibar.
Right.
So if you continue onto the beach, that's you have to lay over in Dar es Salaam before you head out to Zanzibar and get on the beach.
So that was it. That is our trip. Here's our contact details. So if you want to get a hold of us, you have any questions, feel free. If you can email us, you can give us a call. We are here now. If you have any questions, we're so grateful that you spent the last hour of your Tuesday evening with us, hopefully enjoying a nice drink and some pretty pictures. And please let us know if you think of anything in the meantime that we can answer for you.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, we'll hang on for another minute or so.
But if not, we are so grateful that you joined us this evening. We have another webinar coming up next week where Sunit and Mishan are going to traverse through Namibia with you. We're having a special Earth Day one tomorrow if you are interested in tuning in about the last of the tuskers, so the elephants and the poaching of their tusks. So that'll be really interesting. We're bringing in an expert in the field. Oh, questions coming in. All right.
Okay, so number 1, what was our favorite property? That's so, what was our, I would go region by region. I would say Serengeti, it was definitely Chum Chum. That one was magical. The Serengeti is Crater. The Highlands. The Highlands is life-changing.
Serengeti would be Sasakwa.
Yeah. Very luxurious.
Yeah.
And then southern Tanzania as a whole, I would say Sand River Salou.
Yes.
They had the best activities, very high attention to detail. It was really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. So many questions.
So
I love it.
how long do you recommend of a trip to Tanzania? I see. Tanzania, I would say as long as you can spend, really. A lot of people only go for 10 days to 2 weeks, which you can comfortably do the northern circuit in about 10 to 12 days. Beyond that, the more extra time you have to spend, the more you can explore. So we don't recommend doing what we did, where we did, you know, 1 night at this camp, 2 nights at that camp.
Right.
We recommend spending 3 to 4 nights.
Depending on what region you're in, right?
Right.
So if you were to do like that standard northern circuit, you probably want a minimum of 10 days.
Right.
If you want to try and add in Robundo, you got 3 nights there. If you, now heading to southern is a journey. So it's worth it to spend at least 6 nights down there if
Right.
you're gonna add that in.
And so if you can spend 3 weeks in Tanzania, then you can comfortably see all that we saw and did.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Agreed.
I've had people break it up into 2 different trips where they do northern and then they go back the next year for southern.
For southern, absolutely. So
what can you tell us about
coronavirus? Question on everyone's mind. The reason we are all hanging out tonight. No. So basically, you know, like you and the rest of the world, we're holding tight and we're just watching. We know that this is a daily changing thing, and we are just hoping and praying and crossing our fingers and toes and holding thumbs that it doesn't impact and affect these beautiful destinations.
Right.
I know that, you know, from a tourism perspective, it's definitely hitting Africa hard, because a lot of these camps are supporting communities, and there's concern about poaching. If there's no vehicles on the property, then the poachers are feeling a little bit safer, and so there are many different causes that are, you know, playing into this.
Right.
At the moment, they're in lockdown, and we're hoping that that's going to make the difference that it needs to make, and we are confident and hopeful that Tanzania and the rest of Africa will return back to the incredible safari destination, and the tourism will start flowing back in there again soon.
Right.
But really, it's a holding pattern. We're all in a holding pattern right now.
Right. And they also were very they were very proactive in protecting their country from the coronavirus.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they were one of the first to protect their borders and put in implement the precautions needed to protect their people, to protect the wildlife, to protect the country.
And lockdown is lockdown there. I mean, you don't leave your house.
Right.
So,
like camps are shut down. You can't really get there right now.
Yeah.
But as soon as camps comfortably open back up, I would say get there and support the people, support the country.
Absolutely.
Because they do take as many precautions as necessary. And there's probably no safer place to be than the bush.
Right.
You're not around
people.
You're not.
Yeah.
You don't hug people that you meet. Like, it's one of the safest places to be.
So the next question was, when do you think it'll open? And that's hard for us to say at this point. I'm really hopeful that trips for our clients will not, you know, August and beyond will not be impacted. But right now we're just advocating for them, supporting them. And if there is anybody who's scheduled to travel, we're working with our partners to get their trips postponed. Hopeful that it doesn't continue on to that trend, but if it does, we're here and we're hoping it doesn't last for too long.
And then are there any age restrictions to this trip? So, on safari, they're pretty flexible with different ages. Yeah. There are a lot of camps that have the restriction of they require children of 11 and up is a lot of times when you're comfortable enough to be in a vehicle, that sort of a thing, they recommend 11 and up, but there are specific safari lodges and camps for younger kids. So there are some properties like Lamai Serengeti, they have a family camp, and they take infants, like they'll take babies all the way up.
And they have specialist guides that are there to support you and help you with child minding and engaging the kids in educational activities, or just giving the parents a break so they can go get a massage and like teach the kid about how to be a junior ranger. So,
but they model safaris around kids. So they'll even go out on shorter game drives throughout the day at different times.
Yeah, different sleep schedules.
Right, just to mind like kids' attention spans and keeping them engaged and still safe. So if you have younger kids and you want to travel, I would say don't let that stop you from going on safari.
Agreed.
Because there are plenty of people who are there to help that and take care of you.
Absolutely. And there's even, if you're trying to do something like multi-generational, there are specific properties that are like Lamai again, that are basically like a private villa. So you've got the parents' room and the grandparents' room and the kids' room, and you've even got a nanny room if you wanted to bring a nanny along to help out. So there are places that you can go depending on what your needs are. If you're a honeymooner or you're multi-gen, you're traveling with an infant.
Different properties for
fit
everyone.
for different people.
Yeah.
Tiny puddle jumpers. So Marissa asked if there are, what we're flying around on. So essentially they are 12, anywhere from 4 to 12 passenger, like private charter, not private, but chartered planes. So yes, essentially puddle jumpers. They'll have 2 pilots there. That's where the weight restriction comes in. You're typically in the air hour and a half
Yeah. Sometimes you'll pop up in the air, you'll pop back down.
Wheels up, wheels down.
You fly just above tree level, so you're not going really high up in the air. You don't need a pressurized plane. To be honest, I was apprehensive going into this. I didn't know what to expect. They're a little bit scary. They're kind of rattly. And mid first flight, it was very comfortable.
Yeah, well,
and it was exciting because you get to see the wildlife from below. And there was one point where we had a flight delayed because there was a rhino on the airstrip, the flight before us, and so they couldn't get to us in time. And so you just kind of go with the flow, but the flights are not at all scary or uncomfortable when you're up in the air.
How much would the trip, Regina asks, how much would that trip cost if you did not go high luxury? So depending on the time of year and depending on the level of accommodations, the price can really range. And when you start bringing in multiple people too, it can also change. So for example, if you've got the vehicle like we had, split between 2 people, but it could have held 6. Right. So imagine that cost split between 6 people. Typically we would recommend, 6. Yeah, I would say 600 per person per day as kind of a starting point.
600 to 1,000.
Right, and then up.
Per person per night. And if you go during peak season, so if you want to see the wildebeest migration, you want to get up to that prime river crossing viewing area, those specific nights, it's going to be at least 1,000 per person per night. But it fluctuates, and we can usually work in some cost-effective options. Right. But yeah, I would say 600 to 1,000 is comfortable per person per day. And that includes all of your meals, that includes all of your game drives. The only thing that doesn't include is gratuity. Gratuity, right.
Drinks typically included as well.
Drinks are all included.
So Annette asks about purchase on visa. So we actually purchased our visa on arrival in Tanzania. However, recently in the past 6 months or so, Tanzania has been a little bit more particular about how they're processing people through on arrival. So as a result, we recommend that you purchase in advance. It's a relatively easy process. We're here to support you and answer questions along the way. You get a little electronic visa ticket that you present with your passport and you're good to go. It's kind of nice because then you're not carrying the cash also for it because you can use your card and just get it squared away.
Absolutely. We have a question about the locust in Kenya. Liz, do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to?
I missed. Do you have any updates regarding locusts?
So there is a season around the rainy season for locusts. Right. So it's something that happens every year. It's not something that's particularly out of this world for this year. Right. It's not unexpected for us who are used to it. It's just something that I think was picked up by news this year.
Yeah, agreed.
So camps are used to it. They arrange accordingly. It's not uncommon and it's not really detrimental.
And this is time of year you really wouldn't be traveling anyways because it's the rainy season. And so a lot of camps are actually closed because of the rainy season, which kind of leads into the next question of when's the best time to go in off season. So we usually would say like November and May. So May, it's starting to move into winter. November, it's starting to come out of winter. February is great because it's lots of babies and flowers.
You get taller grasses, but then you do get the babies.
And bright green, beautiful
colors
for photography.
So that's when we went in May, it was just after the second rainy season. Yeah. And it was beautiful and vibrant and very, very green.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, the flowers and it's gorgeous.
And everything.
So really not a bad time to go unless it's like the peak rainy season.
Right. So really any time is good time, except we do avoid the top rainy season. What is the best time to go if you are not interested in wildebeest migration? I would say any time.
Yeah.
Even if it's better for you to travel in summer, which is the peak migration season, but you don't want to see the migration, I would say go to the southern Serengeti. Yeah. Like go to the central Serengeti. It's going to be far more quiet. You still get great wildlife viewing, great cats. So no time is really a bad time, but if you're not interested in the migration, then we won't chase them for you. Right. We won't set you up where they're going to be. We'll find different places where there's still incredible game viewing.
Which likely means less crowding as well. So there's a benefit to that.
And then there was also a question about more hardcore versions of this trip. So I'm not completely familiar with this question, what necessarily hardcore means.
Maybe climbing Kilimanjaro,
but
yeah, do that.
But so there are these things called Acilia adventures. Yeah. And it's so on safari you spend a lot of time in the vehicle, and Acilia adventures focus on getting out of the vehicle, being on foot, doing things that are a bit more extreme, a bit more rugged. And so you can do things like hike from the Ngorongoro crater to the Serengeti,
Right.
like on foot, tenting,
Yep.
camping.
Well, they set it up for you.
You've got your guides. They set it up, but you're on foot for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
You can climb Kilimanjaro, which a lot of people do. You can also climb Mount Meru, and so you can do the whole hiking thing. You can do horseback safaris.
Yes.
And then they have fun things like heli flips. So there are plenty of places where you can go where you can actually do a helicopter tour of the land.
Totally.
And so you can find more options. And then also
get to different places.
Right, get to different places. There's another Asilia adventure where you can go camping, but you can also visit with the Maasai people and spend a day with them, and you can learn their rituals. You can go hunting with them, and you can do different things with different tribes and different people.
A little more entrenched with the local community, a little bit more entrenched with the land.
Right.
So hopefully, Kevin, that answers your question on hardcore. But I would say climbing Kili is probably the way to do it.
Yeah, which you need at least a week to do.
Right.
So that would take away from safari, but at least 7 days to climb Kili.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Okay. Any other questions? I think there's one question about cost. What we mentioned, the per day. So not full luxury, 600 to 1,000 per person per day.
Right.
That doesn't include your international flights.
Yeah, which can range.
1,000.
Yeah, 1,000. I mean, if you catch it on a good day, 900. But to 12.
But business class, 6,000 to 8,000.
Right.
Per person.
Wow, those are really great questions, guys. Thank you so much for sending them to us and for engaging and for listening and letting us relive this trip with you and share some of our love for Tanzania.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such an incredible adventure, and we're so happy that other people love to hear about it as well. Feel free to reach out. I know Rebecca mentioned that she's ready to go to Tanzania, which we would love to plan your trip to Tanzania and East Africa. So reach out, info@alluringafrica.com.
Yep, or hello@alluringafrica.com, and then 321-622-9370. So my email also is liz@alluringafrica if you have any, if you want specific questions. Otherwise, hello works too. And hopefully, if you've got the time, you can tune in tomorrow for Earth Day special with James Curry, where he is, again, talking about the last of the big tuskers. So we really appreciate you being here with us tonight. Thank you so much. And hope you have a wonderful evening. So cheers to Africa and travel sooner than later.
Yes.
Drink to that.
Cheers. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.